On November 1st, 1987, 24 unusual vehicles pulled out of Darwin, Australia to begin the World Solar Challenge, the first transcontinental solar car race. Powered only by energy from the sun, these racers were to cross the entire continent through the dry, desolate outback and arrive in Adelaide, almost 2,000 miles to the south. The entries in this international event came from 7 countries and included teams backed by Ford, General Motors, and Mitsubishi. One car, the GM Sunracyer, led the pack from the starting line and turned what was supposed to be a race into a demonstration of technological innovation.
What GM has done for, you could say, economical motoring is virtually the same as Kennedy did for the space program. Every little detail is magic. It's obvious that the gallium arsenide panels are good, but the motor is good, the cooling is good. It's just pure genius. It's American know-how like we used to see it, and it's nice to see that American know-how is back again.
Each day, the Sunracyer increased its lead, and by the 5th day, the race team was beginning to relax.
The weather was very good to us. We were some 500 miles ahead of the number 2 car. The vehicle was running very reliably, and everything was going very, very well.
I drove later on that day, and that was sort of my favorite driving stint of the race because it was in the middle of the day. It was a very high, bright sun, and the car was really going fast, and it was a bit hilly in some places, so it was just really motoring along 50 miles an hour, going up to 60 on the downhills.
It must have been late December that I first heard about the World Solar Challenge. Between then and about the 1st of March, I was in the process of trying to evaluate the various areas of resource that might be tapped for the program.
With only 7 months until race time, Howard Wilson assembled a team of engineers from General Motors, Hughes Aircraft, a subsidiary GM Hughes Electronics, and AeroVironment, a small independent engineering firm. This team was given 3 weeks to see if it was even possible to design and build a solar car in such a short time.
During that 3-week study, we looked at about 10 alternative configurations, many of which were very similar to what we saw in the end in Australia.
And out of these plans emerged the Sunracyer design, a unique approach which emphasized low aerodynamic drag by incorporating the solar array into the body structure rather than using the standard flat-top design.
Every time we worked out the numbers, the Sunracyer kept appearing.
Using sophisticated computer modeling, Sunracer's shape was refined. The design team knew that a body integral solar array would cost them about 10% in solar collection efficiency, but would pay off in aerodynamic gain. The Sunracyer would have a lightweight aluminum frame to support the 570 pounds of car and driver, a powerful MagnaQuench motor weighing just 11 pounds, silver zinc batteries for storing solar energy, power electronics to regulate the electricity going to the motor and batteries, a sturdy but lightweight body made of a Nomex and Kevlar composite, a gold-plated canopy to reduce infrared radiation and keep the driver cool, and a solar array with 8,800 silicon and gallium arsenide solar cells which convert sunlight to electricity. In just 3 weeks, the design team had identified these key elements of the Sunracyer. Now came the big job, designing, building, and testing it. The first step was to test a quarter-scale model at the Caltech wind tunnel to determine 2 things, the car's aerodynamic drag and its crosswind stability.
The basic drag that we measured was fine. It was 0.09 drag coefficient and straight-ahead flow, which made us very happy. It was right where we wanted it to be.
In fact, the 0.09 drag coefficient was the lowest ever measured for a land vehicle at the Caltech facility. But the crosswind results raised a special concern about Sunracer's safety in a crosswind when passed by a large truck, for example. Fins were added to the roof and underneath the tail, which minimized aerodynamic lift. Sunracer's components were being produced simultaneously at locations throughout the country, but construction and assembly took place at AeroVironment's Simi Valley facility. AeroVironment was chosen for their innovative work in alternative energy, low-speed aerodynamics, and ultralight vehicle development.
A little less than 15 pounds.
Incredible.
Yep, 14.82.
This 15-pound frame would support a total weight of 570 pounds.
Take the full weight on that. Do that again.
Pretty good.
Okay,
Chet, you've met Herman?
Oh, sure. Hi, Herman.
Hi, Chet.
How you doing? So, how it works, this has got...
Dr. Chester Kyle, who helped design the bicycles for the 1984 U.S. Olympic team, was brought in to design Sunracer's brakes, wheels, and quick-release hubs for fast tire changes.
They're small O-rings, and so this brake will float this way, but positively go back that way.
The first chassis was assembled in late May, just 2 months after the initial design.
It was very crude at that stage. It had no suspension. It had the suspension pieces, but no springs, no shocks in it at that point. But it did work. I think the steering wheel needs to be up higher, and I can't reach it.
It worked, but would it survive the 2,000 grueling miles of Australian outback? To begin the durability testing, Ray Borrett, the reliability manager for Holden's Motors, GM's Australian subsidiary, was brought in as race team manager.
How's it go?
It's quite impressive. Yeah, it's good on the steering, good response. Brakes are quite effective. I was surprised. Feels good.
Terry Satchel of Chevrolet Pontiac Canada designed Sunracer's suspension system. In order to save weight, the team first tried rubber springs. But after testing, with concern that the rubber would not hold up in the high temperatures of the outback, they switched to steel springs and regular shock absorbers. These components improved the car's ride and handling remarkably. Parking lot speed bumps were hardly felt.
Oh, you mean instead of a hole, have a notch? But then you could run a grommet over the whole thing and put the grommet down into the notch. And put the cap.
The Sunracer's compact motor was designed by General Motors Research Labs, principally by Dr. Nady Bowles. For its size, the motor was powerful, rated at 2 horsepower for continuous use and up to 10 horsepower for short bursts.
It was a good opportunity to use a new magnetic material that the research labs had developed and now Delco Remy is producing called MagnaQuench. It's a very high-strength magnet that allows the motor to be made quite small for its power rating and also quite highly efficient. Our motor ended up at about 92% efficiency.
Alan Cocconi, a multi-talented consulting engineer, designed Sunracer's power electronics. This sophisticated system maximized the power produced by the curved solar array and controlled its distribution to the motor and batteries. The Sunracer body had to be both lightweight and sturdy. A composite of Nomex honeycomb material sandwiched between 2 layers of Kevlar made a tough structure weighing only 3 ounces per square foot.
Looks really even, the honeycomb pattern. It's come out very well. And these facet lines look nice. Yeah.
Hughes designed and built the solar array system. Their experience with building solar-powered satellites gave them the expertise to array the solar cells with the circuitry required and to fit them to Sunracer's curved body surface. This array would have a peak output of 1,500 watts. Hughes also designed the battery pack. Silver zinc batteries were chosen for their excellent storage capacity. Sunracer's 60-pound pack can hold as much energy as 250 pounds of conventional lead-acid batteries. Although Sunracer usually runs on power directly from the solar array, to maintain a nearly constant speed, it needs to draw on stored solar power from the batteries to help it up hills, when overtaking another car, or when there's just not enough sunlight.
After 4.5 months of production, fairly intense work, 7 days a week, we had finished the first Sunracyer and took it immediately out to the proving grounds at Mesa, Arizona.
Yes, the top pins, just start it. Just start it down, pivot it on down. Pivot it all the way down until the front touches. Let the front set.
We did our first driving test with a rear body panel with no solar cells, just in case anything went wrong. We wouldn't ruin a whole big solar panel. But it turned out the car really drove just fine.
Forward? Oh, hot out here. Oh, did they? That's cooler inside.
We had no qualms at all about later that day of putting the real solar panel on and starting to really start doing the testing, the durability testing of the car.
With only 3 months until race time, the team was trying to do a lot of things at once. All the drivers were together for the first time. They were Molly Brennan, a Chevrolet engineer, Ingo Janther, an engineer from GM's Opel subsidiary in West Germany, John Harvey, a renowned Australian race car driver, Terry Satchel from Chevrolet Pontiac, Canada, Ray Borrett, the race team manager from Australia, and Alec Brooks from AeroVironment. Each driver was able to drive the car in temperatures similar to what they would find in the Australian outback. Fortunately, the gold-plated canopy kept the cockpit cooler than expected. In fact, the Sunracer's performance impressed everyone.
It was less vulnerable to crosswinds than we had anticipated. It had much better stability and control. The maneuverability was really better than we had any right to expect.
Sunracer's aerodynamics were tested again in the General Motors wind tunnel. The results were again record-breaking, with a drag coefficient of 0.128. As a result of these tests, the car was lowered by about an inch, moving the brakes and wheel apparatus up inside the body. This reduced the aerodynamic drag measurably.
Bruce, she just keeps getting faster and faster. It's again a new speed record. The time was 8 minutes, 28.628 seconds, and the speed is now 35.227 miles per hour.
The previous solar record had been a little over 24 miles per hour, so we were pretty confident that we could break that record by a substantial amount.
Despite an overcast day and running exclusively on solar power, they set a new world record, beating the old record by 11 miles an hour.
How did it feel to break the record?
It felt fantastic.
What does it sound like in there?
It's very quiet. It's actually rather quiet. It sounds more like a hum coming from the car.
Is it sort of eerie? I mean, is it like...
No, I think it's great. It's not at all real loud. You just kind of hum along on the track. It's what a car that looks like this ought to sound.
Up until the time of the speed record, we had been under the safety net of the GM proving ground, so we thought it was also quite important to get out and really get into the real world.
Sunracyer, we have a large semi starting to overtake the motorhome behind you. He'll be passing you in about 10 seconds. Over. Thank you.
The Sunracyer and its crew clocked over 4,000 miles of durability testing before the race. This gave the team a chance to practice their race procedures and perfect communications between the command vehicle, the motorhome which followed the Sunracyer everywhere, and the other vehicles in the support caravan. During this time, Ray Borrett, the race team manager, and John Harvey, the head driver, whipped the race team into shape. By the early weeks of October, the Sunracyer team had already won a race of sorts, the race against time. In just 6 months, they had designed, built, and tested a prototype of the car, which set the world's speed record. With knowledge gained from the prototype, they built and tested the actual race car and were on their way to Australia for the real race, the World Solar Challenge.
Next car, please. Next car.
One of the most exciting times was the day before the race. Everyone had been looking in the newspapers and the magazines for some glimpse of the other competitors, and there was very little of that available. And so to see them all there and to see them running for the first time was really a very emotional thing for all of us that had been working so long to get there.
To qualify for the race, each car was required to demonstrate two things. One was their top speed, which established the starting lineup.
88, we did 113. 88, 113.
The Sunracyer won the pole position with 113 kilometers or 70 miles an hour. Each car also had to demonstrate its ability to pass an Australian road train. Road trains are the huge three-trailered trucks which dominate the Stewart Highway, a narrow two-lane road which would serve as the race route. The crosswinds created by these high-speed monsters are strong enough to blow a lightweight car off the road. With its streamlined shape, Sunracyer easily passed this test.
Thanks for coming to Darwin. I would like you to be extremely careful out there tomorrow. The traffic is using the highway like it does every day. Your cars are no more flimsy than some of the cars we buy when it comes to a road train hitting it. It's normal traffic, normal common sense. You have no extra regulations, you have no extra things just because you're a solar car. You are a normal motor car.
Watch out. That'll do.
And Hans, what is your guess as the top speed of the leading cars?
Well, I believe that if we crack an average speed of 60 kilometres to Adelaide, we've cracked the world record that is so mind-boggling that none of us can understand just how the sun can do that just shining on a car.
5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
There was very much of a crush at the beginning of the race. The benefit of the pole position wasn't the fact you were just that much ahead. The benefit of the pole position was that you could get out of the mess.
Our initial strategy was to use excess battery power that allowed John Harvey to really just gun it and try to open a lead so that we can get out there and keep going.
John Harvey flew off at 60 miles an hour, leaving the others behind. The Mauna Loa from Hawaii gave Sunracyer a good chase, at least initially. It was followed closely by the Swiss car, the Spirit of Biel. Behind them came Australian Geographic's Team Marsupial and the Ford car, Sunchaser. Sunracyer maintained its starting lead. As the day went on, it pulled further and further ahead. All cars were required to stop by 5 o'clock. The scout team monitored the weather and road conditions ahead of Sunracyer and chose the stopping place each day. While camp was being set up, the race team went over the car to make sure nothing was wrong with the electronics, frame, body, tires, or wheels.
Pretty good.
Using the solar array, the batteries could be charged for 2 hours in the evening and again in the morning before start time.
In case the sun comes out, we may dodge it 4 feet ahead, 6 feet back.
4 feet?
But for right now, just 4 feet.
Have we marked the place at all?
By the end of the first day, Sunracyer had traveled 323 miles. The second place car, the Spirit of Beale, was over 70 miles behind, followed closely by the Ford car. The Mauna Loa had dropped to 4th place after exhausting their batteries trying to keep up with the Sunracyer. Weather was one variable the Sunracyer team had no control over. Partial sun meant a lower charge for the batteries.
It's 1 everywhere. Just at 1
straight up.
1.1. It's probably the way it is about the best.
Using a solar cell and a current meter, the sun's intensity was measured to see how much charge the batteries could get in the 2 hours allowed before the observer sent the car off at 8 o'clock.
Giving how much more is? I saw 11 instead of 10.
Yeah. It doesn't make that much of a difference. But hey, every little bit counts. Yeah.
Winds have come around to the southwest. We're now reading 220 degrees at 10 gusting to 15 Ks over.
In the command vehicle, the team monitored 80 channels of telemetry from the Sunracyer. This information enabled them to keep a close eye on the car's vital signs, including the solar array output and battery charge. By combining this input with the predicted weather and wind conditions, each day's strategy was calculated. The team had determined the best race speed was one which remained nearly constant. Energy from the solar array powered the motor and during peak sunlight hours supplemented the battery charge. This stored solar energy was then used for climbing hills or during cloudy conditions. On the third day, the Sunracyer reached one of the last remaining unpaved sections of the Stewart Highway. The team decided to change Sunracer's regular tires, which have low rolling resistance but are thin, for knobby tires, which could better handle the rocks and bumps ahead.
Real scary.
I know, but here it's been real stable. It's just so you get little nudges and
Brakes, brakes.
There's much heavier rain down further, which I think you're going to get to before our 5 o'clock stop.
In just 4 minutes, all 4 tires were changed. A new driver was installed, and a current weather report was given. It was clear that Ray Borrett and John Harvey's race expertise and all those practice runs back in the States were paying off. By the end of the third day, Sunracyer was more than halfway through Australia and the race. It was 310 miles ahead of the number 2 car, the Spirit of Beale, which, with the Ford car, had stopped north of Alice Springs. The rest of the field was spread out over 900 miles along the Stewart Highway. There were 7 stops set up along the route for the news media to look at the cars and interview the drivers. No maintenance work was allowed during these 10-minute stops, but drivers could be changed. All drivers had to be ballasted to 187 pounds, which eliminated the advantage of having a jockey for a driver. The race official, along with each team, made sure this rule was observed.
It's 7:30. The Sunracyer, which is leading the solar car race from Darwin to Adelaide, is set to tackle Adelaide's traffic, and the bicentennial Camel Trekkers are now set to take on their biggest challenge. Good morning, I'm Tim Butler. The head driver of the leading car in the World Solar Challenge, John Harvey, does not anticipate any problems with the heavy traffic as the vehicle nears Adelaide. Mr. Harvey said the vehicle was capable of speeds of over 100 kilometres an hour.
Traffic really doesn't present a problem. We have three modes in which we can drive the car. One is the battery mode, and there's also a cruise control, which you can set to constant speed. But if you have to overtake a car, you can just flick it with a switch back into manual mode, and then you drive it like a normal car on the throttle, and you can accelerate and pass a car.
Mr. Harvey expects the Sunracyer to reach Adelaide by 10 o'clock and be in Seppeltsfield by early this afternoon.
When the Sunracyer crossed the finish line, the second-place car was 623 miles and 2.5 days behind it. The last-place car was over 1,500 miles back and wouldn't finish for almost a month.
I'd have to say, first of all, congratulations to the entire Sunracyer team. It's been delightful to see what God's sunshine can do, coupled with your ingenuity and technology. And of course, we've been delighted to see the tremendous use of technology in Sunracyer all happen because of all the people that made it happen. We started fully charged. We're fully charged right now. And the fellas tell me after a little rest and relaxation, they're going to turn around and try it the other way. So just fantastic. And on behalf of General Motors, again, we thank you very much. And we're delighted to be in the winner's circle today. Thank you.
General Motors did much more than win the World Solar Challenge. By entering this race, they had taken a considerable risk. The resources of 15 organizations of their company, as well as those of Hughes Aircraft, their new high-tech subsidiary, had been committed to the project. They also had formed a partnership with a small outside company, AeroVironment. By building the Sunracyer and winning the race by such a large margin, they have shown the world that efficient cars powered by alternative energy sources can be built. They have shown that we can do more with less, placing fewer demands on the Earth's resources. When a car crosses a continent averaging 42 miles an hour on just 2 horsepower, it changes our view of transportation. Although solar-powered cars may not be part of our future, more efficient cars, perhaps electrically propelled, will be. Lessons learned from Sunracer's components should find their way to the design computers of car engineers all over the world. What today's students, tomorrow's engineers, will do with this new technology may revolutionize transportation.